Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Coach U Show. Today, we have the podcasters of podcasters. What an honor to be with Jeremy Ryan Slate. Jeremy, of all people, he knows how to command your brand and he knows how to get people on podcasts. So if you want to learn about podcasting, there's no better way than to learn from someone who actually does it for real. It's like a fat weight loss coach. Never take their advice. And Jeremy, being a power lifter, can give us powerlifting advice too, right? I would trust someone who's actually done the thing. So if you want to learn about podcasting, this is the guy you want to listen to.
Yeah, I literally rolled out of the gym before this conversation. You and I were texting before I got here. So here we go, man.
Look at the pump. Look at the vein right here.
I'm trying, man.
Now you told me some of these numbers before when we hung out together, but how much do you bench and squat and those other numbers?
Well, that's what I benched and squatted in my 20s, man. I'm close. I'm on the wrong side of 30, closing in, and I'm 40 now. So I don't have the same.
What was it before? Just so we can boast a little bit.
So at 21, I'll be 36 in a couple months. But at 21, I was bench pressing 455, deadlifting 635, and squatting 705 at 5'7" and 217 pounds.
5'7", 217. You're basically what's the word for that? A tank.
Yeah, I was kind of like a bowling ball on wheels, man. And now I'm 160. So it's a big difference in life in my 30s.
Man. So aside from the fitness, how come podcasting became your thing? And what did you do what are you, like episode 1017, 1000 something?
Yeah, I don't quite remember the number. It's like 1,050 or 1,060 or something like that. We're over 1,000 at this point. I started the show back in 2015. I really started it because I tried a bunch of stuff that didn't really work. I'd been a teacher for a couple of years at a grad school, and I wasn't really cut out for it, and decided I was going to try this whole entrepreneurship thing. And you know how that is when you first start out, man. Like you try a little bit of everything and nothing kind of hits. And I've been a podcast listener since 2009. So I started the show literally as a hobby in 2015. We had 10,000 listens in our first month, which was November of 2015. And it's been fun ever since, man. Yeah.
And I remember you were talking about your first podcast and how kind of bad they were or cringy and how you've gotten so much better. And I remember seeing your previous thing at your kitchen table and it was kind of dark. And now you have this nice studio with this wood grain under your basement. Tell me about the evolution of you as a podcaster and what you've learned.
It's interesting, man, because, like, especially like with how things are now, like I think video is like the biggest part of what you're doing in the podcast world. For me, I started as an audio only show. And the reason I didn't start on video is number one, I didn't have the best setup for it. But number two, like I was afraid to be on camera. So I kind of just started audio because it was really easy to talk to your computer and not have the person there. I didn't even have the camera on at the time, which is interesting. Yeah. So the first version of my show was called Rock Your Life. I didn't do any research. So I didn't realize somebody else had the name. So I had to change the spelling. So it looked like it was just spelt wrong. And it was kind of this very life coachy thing, which people that know me well know I am the furthest thing from. So I was just trying to like start something in the online marketing world. It didn't do well. I quit in about 60 days. And I ended up taking a bunch of courses, frankly, almost too many courses, because I thought I kept needing more information. I think that's a lot of things that stops us from starting. I started this show in 2015, and I just tried to get better every day, right? Like continue improving. And the thing I looked at is, I think really the best thing you can do is have an interview show for a couple different reasons. Number one, you're getting branding positioning, right? You're being seen with someone. But number two, the ability to prepare for content, you don't have to prepare as much. I'm not going to say you don't have to prepare at all, because you should come into every conversation prepared enough for a good conversation. But so for me, I just tried to focus on being a better interviewer, watching other people that interviewed, watching people like Larry King, watching people like Oprah, and seeing like, what do they do that I'm not doing? So I could continue to get better at that. And as I got more comfortable, which took hundreds of episodes, by the way, like I was around 500 or 600 episodes, I'm kind of feeling good about it.
Yeah.
I started doing more video, started doing more of these other things. And we've really been taking advantage of YouTube, especially shorts recently, which has been big, Instagram Reels. So it took a long time to get there, because people always ask me, they're like, how do you get better as an interviewer? And I'm like, dude, just do more interviews. That's really what it comes down to. There's no shortcut.
It's like working out, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same.
But people want to know the secret, so what's the secret that the pro podcasters know that, us newbies don't understand?
But it's the viewpoint. And there's one of my favorite things is to approach everything you do with professionalism. And that means number one, integrity, being true to who you are and where you are actually are in your journey. And I think, frankly, this as much as I do, a lot of people in the online space aren't true to that integrity, and that's not cool. So that's one part of it. The other part about it is being honest with yourself, what you're good at and what you're not, and continuing to work on those things that you're not good at every single day. I'm still trying to figure out like how I can do better. One of the things I like to do is my preparation is actually important. I listen to interviews people I'm going to interview have done with people I really respect because I want to see a couple different things. Number one, how do they communicate? Because you're going to see that a guest either answers long or answers short. So as an interviewer, your questions either have to be better thought out, have a better point, or if somebody's too long, you have to be okay with kind of steering them and kind of bring them back to the conversation. So being really good as an interviewer and continuing to work at that craft is just something I'm trying to do every day, man.
Well, you're a pro at it. I mean, just look at you.
I'm trying. Can always get better, but I'm trying, man.
One of the things that we hear a lot of people talk about, especially with the shift to mobile, is that the video production quality doesn't have to be as nice. You don't need the fancy camera. This is a Rode NTG5. I don't know if you can see it. I think it's out of frame.
Oh, wow.
But I've got, if you could see here, I have almost $30,000 worth of equipment.
Oh my gosh.
I've been filming now just on my iPhone with simply a tripod. And so you can buy things like this for $15 then Zoom and whatever. Well, the new iPhone, new whatever, Mac OS allows you to use your phone as an extension of your computer automatically. In fact, I think I could even just do it right here and show you.
It seems to like automatically pick it up. Like you don't even have to connect it or anything.
Here, I literally am selecting the camera, and now can you see?
Oh my gosh.
You can see around the studio. You can see.
Oh, you don't want to see the other side of my studio, man. You're going to see water bottles and coffee cups everywhere.
You can see that this is a real background there. I've got a TV. I got a whiteboard. There's a fancy A7R4 camera. Now I'm doing a video of the video, which is sort of weird. But I can switch here. You can see here in Zoom.
All right, here we go. Let's give this a shot. Yeah. So there we go. There's the other side of my camera.
Nice.
So it's not that exciting. There's all my messy coffee cups, so.
I've got 3 TVs here so that I can put the other guests there or other people.
I have one monitor up on the wall that's right behind the camera so that I'm like looking at you.
I have 2 Apple TVs, but then I switch back to this is my main camera. And then I have a camera above here so that I can draw if I want to do like a diagram, or I can shift it over to the whiteboard. Like I have, what's the thing called? A slider that goes back and forth. So I can have the main camera here, and then the slider goes back and forth so it can switch A and B. I have an A10 mini. Anyway, I don't want to go into all that.
You got a lot of stuff, man. Like, because I know for me, I've tried a lot of different stuff, and like I don't know, I feel like, the production quality matters somewhat. Like I wouldn't go crazy with it, but at the same, because the camera here, this is just a Logitech Brio. Yeah. But the Logitech Brio out of the box, in my opinion, is a terrible camera. So there's an app you can get for your MacBook. It's like $7. It's called Webcam Settings, and it lets you change like the aperture and a lot of that stuff, so you get a little bit of a better picture out of it. I use just 2 lights. They're both at an angle in front of me, and I also use this like hair lamp behind me so that you get depth in the photo a little bit. So you don't have to go crazy. Shoulder. And then I do like good audio gear. So this is Shure SM7B, which is a really solid mic. And then I run it into a Focusrite 2i2.
Okay.
And so it's not a crazy setup, but to me, it's good enough. And I think this is probably about $1,000 worth of gear in this room.
Yeah, that sounds, but the audio being the most important part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm using for my microphone. This is my favorite one. I used to use the Rode Wireless Go 2. Which is good for the phone as well as just in the studio. But this Pico Stream allows me to have, it's giving me 20 hours of battery, and it allows me to interview 2 people. So I often will have 2 or 3 people will fly into the studio, and I find the podcast in person is always better.
So I use one of these. This is a Tascam DR40. Okay. And it has on the bottom, you can put 2 XLR mics into it. So it's like $140, but it does a good job. Yeah,
I've got the Zoom H5. Which is unnecessary.
This is like an audio and video nerd podcast.
The whole point that I was making was that I think, and feel free to disagree because you obviously have done more episodes than I have, but I feel like as long as you have an iPhone, good audio, just decent lighting, which can be the sun, you've prepared, and it's a good guest, it's going to be amazing.
I would totally agree. And because I think, frankly, like people are doing more video, but with your iPhone and stuff, you can get away with a lot more because there's filters, there's like different lighting tricks you can do, apps for your phone and stuff. So you can get away with a lot. Good audio, you don't have to get a mic like this, but good audio is really important because it is a barrier to people being able to listen to you. Like it has to be listenable. I think sometimes people have nothing and they're in the middle of a room with a Zoom And it kind of sounds like the adults on Charlie Brown. And it's like people have to be able to listen to you because that is kind of the most important modality you're delivering in.
It is. Well, can you hear me okay? I have this.
You sound great. You sound great, man.
Awesome. But when you have that nice, big, authoritative podcast mic, you have that nice bass voice, right? You always hear these people come on with the bass voice when they come, you know? It's like, wow.
My wife gives me a hard time because she's like, I can hear you try to talk a little bit bassier on it. I'm like, well, it's my radio voice. What am I going to do?
What's the most interesting podcast guest you've had? I know you've had 1,050 or whatever.
I've had a lot of cool ones. Like I'm a big racing fan. So I've had Elio Castroneves. He's only one of 3 people to win Indy 500 4 times. A very incredible guy. A guy we both know that was a cool conversation. Matthew Januzik from Escape Fitness.
Oh, I did it with him last night. Yeah.
Cool guy with a lot he's doing. I just talked to him yesterday, actually. But like I've had some of my favorite authors on too. Like my favorite author is a guy named Brad Thor, and he writes a lot of like political thriller type books. Got a chance to chat with Brad, and it was cool because it was before his latest book was coming out. So he sent my whole family autographed copies, like really nice guy. So
nice.
I don't know, man. I get to talk to a lot of cool people. And for me, a little bit of it's hard not to have your fanboy come out, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I love Matthew because he's just so well-versed in not just fitness, but life. And he interviews all these other cool people. And he's just such a humble guy, such a great listener.
And he's got a British accent, which makes him automatically sound smarter than me.
And he's so sharp, and he's always dressed in the freshest, latest clothes. He's like, magazine perfect.
Yes.
Now tell me about a time when things didn't go well in a podcast, and what did you do?
So there's been a couple different times, and I think part of it is when a person's willing to receive what's happening, because there's been times where I've had stuff break. Like I've had stuff break, and like I've borrowed stuff from at the time I had a microphone break, and I happened to be living in an apartment building. I kept knocking on doors until somebody actually had a USB mic I could use. That was a good save. I had a guest one time that did the interview outside with airplanes everywhere, and like it just wasn't good. And a lot of times we're able to save it, we're able to work it out. In that particular situation, we weren't able to, because he was like, well, if you have a good editor, you can fix it. You know, you're wasting my time. I'm like, okay, dude, we're going to just kind of go on from here. But there's definitely been some interesting situations we've worked through, but I think as long as you're willing and the guest is willing, you can handle a lot. The thing I'm always thinking with is, you don't know when you're doing virtual interviews what somebody else's ability to use technology is. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot with making sure people get training materials before the interview of like, you know, if you run into this, do this. If you run into that, do this. Hey, this is my cell phone number. You know, text me if you have a question. So we've been able to handle a lot because we had a lot go wrong in the first 3 or 4 years.
Would you be willing to share that kind of onboarding process stuff for other people to have a podcast? They can basically just copy, paste, and put their name, put their information and whatnot. Because we always want the guest to be prepared and make sure, you know, proper audio in a quiet place, good lighting, that whole.
Yes, I just need to put it in a format that's consumable for your audience. Right now, it's kind of like everything that's in my email sequence and stuff. But yes, I can help you with that. Okay.
That'd be great. Because then I'm going to promote that and say, hey, you know, it's one thing to talk about podcasting, but Jeremy Ryan Slate is giving us his actual SOPs so that you can become a better podcaster and have your guests be ready.
Dude. Well, and I think that the thing that helps a lot as well is I'm always looking at like what technology's out there for recording. And actually we've moved off Zoom in the last couple of years, and we've been using something called Riverside FM.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about that as a platform is it has a backup too, which is good. So it records natively on each device. So you don't have to deal with like if things go through Wi-Fi, because if you have a bad signal, you could be in trouble. So it progressively uploads throughout the interview. And then we've had it happen before. Like I had one of my favorite musicians on recently. I had Phil, the lead singer of the band All That Remains, on my show. He had one Chrome extension was blocking another Chrome extension, which didn't like a Chrome extension it lived next to. So because of that, it wouldn't upload. But it has a fail-safe backup on Riverside as well. So that was like something that was like really helpful. So to me, it's kind of had a lot of things to prevent problems. So it's helped us a lot.
I love Riverside, but I was on Mark Schaefer's podcast, and he's the marketing animals guy, and it actually lost the recording. It said, you know, it's like 98% with the stay until it's complete, and the engineering team couldn't recover it. And Mark,
oh my gosh!
So we moved back to Zoom. But we were. I
guess I've been lucky. I guess I've been lucky then, man. In 2 years,
it's only happened to me twice. I probably been on 100 with Riverside, but I've lost 2 of them.
Oh, geez. That anytime you lose one is a problem. So yeah.
Yeah. What else has happened? Because you never know. Like the guest could be late, or their camera's broken, or their wife walks nude behind them, or all sorts of weird.
That hasn't. I've never had anybody naked in my interviews. In staff meetings, we've had people mistakenly walk by other people's cameras for like my company. We're like, come on, guys. But like at the same time, things that have went wrong. I don't know. Kind of good with embracing it as well. Like we had the singer Matisyahu on. He's like a Jewish reggae guy. He was like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this interview, but we're gonna do it while I'm driving." And I'm like, "Ooh, we don't usually do that. Okay, let's just go with it." So he ends up running into his guitar player, and then his guitar player joins the podcast, and then we end up meeting this other guy that joins the podcast. So I've tried to get good at embracing it. So that's kind of some things that have come up there. Wi-Fi has been an issue. It's definitely been an issue. So we've had to re-record sometimes because I know the first time I had a conversation with Mike Dillard, we both had bad Wi-Fi that day, and we actually had to reschedule the interview. So for me, it's making sure, like, number one, I'm always hardwired because that's a really big deal. We switched to fiber optic internet recently too, so that our upload and download speed match. That's been a big deal.
Even on the farm, fiber optic.
Dude, they just ran it. They ran it out here about 3 weeks ago. So we're one of the first people in the neighborhood to actually get fiber.
All right. Very cool. So now that you have been a pro at podcasting, you've launched multiple podcasts, you get other people on podcasts. Some of you referred to me and I've had them on my podcast. What do you do for someone who sucks on camera, but you're trying to get them onto other people's podcasts?
For us, a big part of our process is before we actually put a client on a show, we interview them and kind of see how it's going so we can give them feedback on what we can do. And I've had to interview clients on our company show, the Command Your Brand show, like sometimes 2 and 3 times to make sure they're good. That's not typical because for us, frankly, we're really trying to make sure we're working with people that are already great on camera, because I think that really is important in the world we live in now. But we do a lot of coaching with somebody in the first month to make sure they appear better on camera, because it's, as much as I do, it's vital right now to really do that. But focusing on some of the basics, like making sure you're looking at the camera, is a really big deal. Trying not to fidget too much, relaxing. I find for me, I get stressed out before a big interview still. So I usually go for a walk before an interview, and that kind of calms me down. You go walk. So I go for a walk around the property and kind of chill out. So to me, if you can calm yourself down, if you can look at the camera, if you can just kind of be present and communicate with that person, you're going to do a lot better. But for us, that's one of the reasons we do an interview with somebody first, is because we want to try and work those kinks out with them.
Now, what about young adults, for example, that are on our program and they want to start a podcast and they can't afford having you for coaching and whatnot? How can they get better on camera?
So I would say, as much as this is bad advice, Dennis, is try and do as much content as you humanly can. Do you know what I mean? Because there's kind of no hack. There's no hack to it, man. Like, you do it as much as you can. You get more comfortable. You get better at it. You get consistent. Like, frankly, some of the people that I've seen do really well with video are ones that say, I'm going to make a video every day for the next year. And you see them get better and better and better and better. And I think when you don't have money, but you have time, like, you can continue to work at it, man. And I think that's the biggest thing, is camera presence is something you develop. It's not something someone else can give you.
Yeah. Jake Paul and I have been working on this course that we're going to release hopefully next month. And one of the key things is we're encouraging everybody to make 100 videos. So this 100 video challenge.
Oh, cool.
Which we've documented in here. It's so funny. We printed out this whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Like Lightspeed and these other tools.
Oh my God, you guys must hate trees.
Well, the funny thing is, like, being an internet digital marketer, you would think like there'd be less meetings, there'd be less printing, there'd be less, like there's more of everything else, just like a regular business.
Right.
But the 100 video challenge is we're encouraging people to make 100 videos, because your first, as he says, your first couple videos will suck. And by the time you've made 100, you're a lot better. And we talk about some of his very first videos and how bad they were. Did you know Jake started out as a Disney actor? And he had trouble.
I didn't know that.
Lines. Yeah. Before he became YouTube famous and became a fighter and all that.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, I'm coaching him on video. So
wow.
I have hours and hours. I have 300 videos of me and Jake Paul that no one's ever seen, because people know who he is, but they don't know who I am because I'm behind the scenes, kind of like you in a way. But actually, you're a podcast host. You're not behind the scenes. But basically, you'll see this at some point, of me coaching Jake on what to say and how to move and what to do to make these interactive video sequences, so that we can congratulate people, to be able to then say, Jeremy, congratulations on starting. I see you've made your first video. Awesome, my man. But then we're using the AI software like Overdub and Descript to be able to say your name and to be able to say your address and to be able to say information about you, right? To say like, oh, that's so awesome that you're a podcast host. And then you get this text and there's a video from Jake and he's like, did he make this video for me? I mean, it looks like he's making it, but that's where we are right now with the AI.
Yeah.
I believe that by the end of this year, 2023, this is the landmark year where the robots become sentient and Skynet and all that stuff happens. Because I believe that because of that, when we are recording our podcasts and collecting everything right here, this is feeding the robot. So there are friends of mine that are no longer here anymore. And there are moments that I've captured because from 10 years ago, because I know that one day the technology will be good enough that we can feed it into whatever the name of the software is, Chat GPT, whatever.
Yeah.
And it will be able to I can be able to have a podcast interview with somebody like Jesus or somebody that isn't even alive anymore. And I can get practice and I can learn. And it's not just me watching Jeremy and Dennis talk. It'll be so much more fun, right? That's what I think is going to happen. The fact that you and I are having a conversation, we're sharing our knowledge, is training the AI so that anyone who wants to learn how to podcast or whatever, they can have this interactive conversation with us, even though they're not technically here today with us.
You know what's wild? I was literally listening to a podcast like 3 hours ago where they were talking about Microsoft just patented a software that allows you to talk to dead people. So there you go, man. That's kind of interesting. But if Chat GPT ever asks me, where can I find Sarah Connor? I'm going to be very worried, man. If it asks me for Sarah Connor, man, I am worried.
Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. So my friend Kenny Lauer, who is the chief marketing officer at the Golden State Warriors, he was a client of ours for 5.5 years, absolutely amazing. He left that job and he went to go work for an AI company of which Tony Robbins was the main figurehead, spokesperson, client, investor, whatever you want to call it. And he's been working on that quietly for the last 2 or 3 years to the point where you can now, so Tony's been talking to this AI, right?
Yeah.
And they've been training it so it learns Tony. And now it's at the point where you can talk to the AI, Jeremy, and you don't know if you're actually talking to Tony or not. It's so good.
That kind of scares me a little bit, man. Like that kind of I don't know, that kind of worries me because it's like you get an AI that sounds like me, it's going to start saying things I didn't say. And I don't know, man, that really worries me.
It might be like, you know what? I'm going to have the 20-year-old Dennis that's sharper, like not the old Alzheimer's Dennis, but the Dennis that I'm going to turn the knobs, in Westworld where they can turn the knobs on intelligence and charm and memory and all that. I'm going to turn the thing all the way to 20. And that way you're going to talk with the Dennis who's always at the very top of his game, who knows everything, remembers everyone's names, always says the right things, is always clever, can speak every language. Why wouldn't you? And then we can talk to someone who's dead. Hopefully you don't reenact your dead pets or bring back someone like some criminal from a long time ago, but that's all going to be possible by the end of the year.
So that's why I go the opposite direction on that. And I try to tell my team, we need to do things that don't scale. You know what I mean? We look at
robots can't do yet.
Right. Because we look at certain things in our process, it's like, okay, so then we email the person here and it's like, really? That's where we call the person because you know what? You can't schedule a call, right? It's a human being communicating with you to talk to you. So to me, understanding that environment, yes, it can make our life better. Yes, it can make improvements. But at the same time, we have to really focus on where we're more human because I think that is something that's going to get totally lost and left and dropped by the wayside. And I do think there's something really important and special to humanity that technology can never have.
And therefore, what you are teaching other people, it's not just getting on more podcasts. I used to think podcasts was checking the box of being on all the big podcasts because then I'm a box people want to check for digital marketing. So I get it both ways. But now I realized after building relationships with people like you, we're eating fried chicken at the restaurant, right? We're not just on a podcast. We're building relationships. These are the things that don't scale. And this is the thing that I think because of the way technology is going, this is the hardest thing that this is the last thing that the AI is getting more and more and more sophisticated, but the very last thing is replicating these long form conversations like what we have.
Yes.
And so anyone who this is the highest leverage thing you can do because writing articles and doing SEO, that's all the robots can do all that kind of stuff now and beat you at chess, play video games, all that. But I feel like what you're teaching people, Jeremy, is how to build relationships so that the technology multiplies the power of that relationship. So the fact that we're in February 2023, and let's say by December 2023, our conversation, because it's learned our voice and what we say, and it's pulled in your 1,070 podcasts, so it kind of knows what you say and all that kind of stuff. That allows you to build even more relationships at scale, to be able to coach people. Imagine the virtual Jeremy coach, and all you have to do is press the button to upload all of Jeremy's stuff, and then anybody can have this one-on-one coaching with Jeremy. But if you didn't have all these episodes, if you didn't have these relationships, the quality of the coaching would be weak. So some of my friends there's no video of them. So the AI can't like figure out what they would like. It's just, there's not enough to go off of.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think, once again, it goes back to doing the work and consistently showing up. And that is something that in order for this other stuff to work, you have to have done that. There is no easy way. And I think it's really important too, that you mentioned the people that think like, a certain podcast is like checking a box. Frankly, we've booked some really great podcasts for people, but at the same time, I found that we don't play well with people that think they need to just check 12 boxes and it's kind of over with.
Yeah.
Like the people that we play the best with are ones that are like, I'm here to build a relationship. I'm here to maybe even flow this host business or have them flow me business or, like invite them to my event or something like that. Like it's about being human, man, and not just treating everything like a marketing message where you're getting 1,000 impressions, 3% opt in and 1% buys your thing. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Or the people that are like, all right, who can you get me on? Like what shows can you get? Like this transactional, like what is it called? You're a pimp basically.
So we, on the inside, we call them Golden Corral eaters, right? Because they show up at Golden Corral, they want the all you can eat buffet and they want to know how much everything you got for them. And it's like, so there's this other company, you should go work with them. That's usually how we handle, because it's not a buffet, man. It's about like showing up, offering value, building up your persona, continuing to like build relationships. And those people that show up with that, those shows lead to other shows, which lead to other shows, which lead to relationships, which lead to opportunities, which lead to speaking gigs. So it's like, you have to treat this digital world like the real world. Like, you know what I mean? There's no loss. Like if you're forgetting about the real world and thinking this is a kind of a shortcut, you're just not going to win in anything. And whether it's podcasting, whether it's online marketing, whatever it is, you have to keep the human element in.
Yeah. And that's what makes it interesting. So that people don't just say the same things over and over again and like some robot. What kinds of questions do you like to ask Jeremy to throw a little spice in there?
My favorite question, and this actually got Andy Frisella to drop the F-bomb about 11 times, which I guess isn't hard for Andy because he does it a lot anyway, is I like to ask people what's something they believed at 21 they don't believe now. You get some really big life shifts with people that are doing big things in life. So that's one that I love to ask because you get some of the coolest answers and they're always different. They're never the same thing, which is kind of cool. So that's my favorite one. What's another one I really like?
I'll tell you my favorite one.
Go for it.
Especially someone who's been interviewed many times, I'll ask them, what's a question that you wish that you were asked? And that's another way of getting on what's on their mind. The thing that's really like eating them. Well, I wish people, instead of asking about how I made all this money and sold this company, I wish they'd ask me about this one technique that I had or about my childhood and what was it about that caused me to do this?
I don't know, man.
I've stopped people in their tracks, some C-level executives that are very well spoken, have PR teams around them. And I asked them that question. What question do you wish that you were asked? And the most common answer is, wow, that's a really good question. Damn, you're a really good interviewer.
Well, it's thoughtful and it's a big part. I don't know, man. If you ask me that, I don't know if you'd like the response because it's usually like, I'm thinking about Roman generals and their conquests, and I'm thinking about Alexander the Great and what would have happened if he didn't die in 323. Like, those are the things that run through my head and it kind of drives my wife bonkers.
Yeah. Well, if people ask me that question, they never do. But if they did, I'd probably say, I'm a big fan of niacin, which is vitamin B3 and all that. And then, of course, you know a lot about niacin as well.
Yeah, it gets your skin itching and all that fun stuff, man. It's just cleaning out your system.
Yeah, but like NAD plus and what it does to be able to rebuild your cells and heal and be younger and your immune system and sleep and all that. In fact, it's such a big thing for me that one of my clients, Sam Tejada, the guy in the middle here, he's the glue in the whole IV modern wellness industry. He knows all these other CEOs, like the Jim Donnelly who runs Restore. Some of these guys have 500 locations, 1,000 locations. This is the father of IV therapy. I've interviewed all these guys on Zoom for an hour to be able to put this book together.
Wow.
For my client. And I'm just so fascinated that, a week before I'm going to interview one of these guys, like here's Ben Crosby, who sold Tap Out Fitness, built it to 500 locations and sold it for buku dollars. I spent all this time learning about him and who he is and the whole industry. And then when I'm fangirling, when I'm on the Zoom and I'm asking him all these questions that I honestly want to understand, what is it about gene therapy and about cryo and about hormone replacement therapy and what's good and what's bad and IV and all the regrowing organs and stem cells and like that whole thing, right?
I'm weird when it comes to fitness. So first of all, my favorite thing to put with niacin is beta alanine. It's a really interesting combination that helps with raising your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. Makes your skin kind of warm and tingly, which is interesting. Another thing I'm in love with is cold showers. Usually take one of those every morning because it does a couple different.
Those. I love them, but I hate them.
Dude, I've never been so awake. I usually run first thing in the morning. I do weights later in the day. So I usually come in and do that after I do a couple miles. So like it's kind of a nice way to start the day because you're never so awake. And yeah, it kind of like makes you be able to put up with a little more because damn, it's cold.
Yeah, but you feel so good after. What are the other sort of life hacks for Jeremy Ryan Slate?
So the one thing that I've been doing the last 6 months, which actually has been a game changer, is, as I mentioned, running first thing and then doing weights later in the day. Your body, when you're working out, can stay anabolic or in a growth phase for like 45 minutes, an hour max. So if you're doing weights and then you're doing cardio with it, you're actually breaking down muscle when you're doing that. So I tend to do them separately because you can stay a little bit more anabolic in your workout period. So that's one thing. The other thing is I've actually become, as I've gotten in my 30s, different about how I eat. Like my wife used to make fun of me in my 20s because I carry a cooler everywhere. The thing that I really do now is I look at ratios of what I eat. I'm making sure like I have a good ratio of carbohydrates to fat to protein. And I actually do a lot more fat now than I used to because fat's good for your brain and it actually helps if the right type of fats actually help your body burn other fats, it's thermogenic. So I'm looking at things like that. I wish I was better with sleep, Dennis, frankly. I really do. But, just my life is too busy. So that's just the way it is.
Children.
So yeah, children, man, I have 2 little girls. They are intense. So I just don't sleep as much as I'd like. But if I slept better, I'm sure that would be really good for me. The other thing that I'm a big fan of is sauna as well. Because, in sweat, you can remove a lot of impurities and different things from your system. So I'm a big believer in that as well.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Do you have any final words of wisdom?
I would just tell people to realize kind of there's no shortcut. And when it comes to whether it's a podcast or whether it's anything in your business, it's showing up, it's continuing to work hard because, if you're trying to fake it till you make it, like that can only work so long. And if you really build a skill set, man, like you have something you can use and build off of, whether you're continuing to do what you do or do something else. That's what I really say. And I would just like to say as well, like, I'm just really grateful to you, man. You've been supportive for me for like 7 or 8 years now at this point. So I appreciate what you're doing, man. And just glad to have you out there.
Dude, you're amazing. How do people find you?
They can find me at commandyourbrand.com. We actually just launched our brand new website today, or they can find me at jeremyryanslate.com.
Amazing. And then give a plug for the show on why should people watch this episode of the Coach U Show.
I am Jeremy Slate, and you should watch this episode because I think we're going to talk about doing things that don't scale, what it means to be human, and actually how you can use that to grow your business.
And then let's do back and forth for like a few. I'll say a phrase, you say a phrase. We'll do like 4 or 5 of them, and then our video editor will cut up this piece and then run that as an ad to get people to watch the whole thing.
So is this like first thing that comes to my mind, or are these like fast questions?
No, these are just like little one-liners. So I'll
cool.
start. Guys, if you want to get your podcast on the game, you need to follow Jeremy Ryan Slate. And we just spent an hour going in deep. This is how you're going to be amazing in podcasting. And then we'll go back and forth a few times and then we'll pick like mixes of these.
Sure. This is Jeremy Slate, and I've been hanging out with Dennis Yu here and been really grateful to do so. And you'll actually see in this episode, we're going to talk about things you need to do to have mastery of your podcast business and also mastery of how you communicate. So I'm really excited for you guys to see this.
You want to learn from someone who's done over 1,000 podcasts and is a pro? Do you suck at podcasting and want to learn how to be a better host? Do you get nervous when you interview? Jeremy is about to share all these best tips. Tune in now.
Traditional media is dead, and you're going to see why the new media, which is podcasts, which is video, which is YouTube, which is Rumble and things like that, are what's actually winning. And you're going to see how to take advantage of them today.
Jeremy Slate and I just spent an hour going in deep about podcasting. You're going to learn what the pros do, how you overcome mistakes, and how you grow your brand. Jeremy Ryan Slate, tune in now.
Dennis, you and I just did an awesome episode, and you're going to learn from him the things that make Jake Paul as good as he is.
And how Jeremy did 1,000 episodes with this podcast. Tune in now. That was awesome. Yeah. All right. I always do. I find that, I do the whole $1 a day thing. So
yeah, man. So you're trying to create as much content as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So it'll be probably, 2 or 3 weeks.
No worries.
We have a whole army of VAs that do this whole thing through the Content Factory.
Do you need like my bio and photos and stuff like that? Because I can shoot those over to you if that's helpful.
just send that over. Otherwise, we just grab it from people's websites. But yeah, just send over whatever it is that you want.
Okay.
Do that.
Cool. Awesome, brother. Well, I really, really, really appreciate it. And, it's great to continue to be connected, man.
Dude, you're the best. I can't imagine where things are going to be in like another 4 or 5 years from now, what we're going to be doing, We'll look back on this time and say, you know what? We predicted it was 2023 that the robots became awake and all this stuff happened.
See, I think it's even more interesting than that because I think we're in the middle of a paradigm shift. Like, I think the stuff that we've seen as media, I think it's gone, right? Because if you look at like one of the shows I listen to the most is it's a YouTube live show. It's called Timcast. It's on every night at 8, Tim Pool. He talks about like actually their numbers of who's listening to their live stream on YouTube every night is more than Anderson Cooper. So I think you're seeing a shift in where people are going with media. And I think in actuality, because, you know, traditional media has always pumped their numbers out anyway. Like you're seeing this shift and you're starting to see it, like the death throes of how traditional media is trying to hang on, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox, whether it's all these different ones, they're not as relevant as they were. And I think you're seeing so much of a shift here. That's my 2 cents.
I got to think about, I'm going to have to check out this Timcast. I'm learning something new every day.